eerie sight, for my monster from his slab began to rise, and suddenly, to my surprise,
he did the mash.
He did the monster mash.
The monster mash.
It was a graveyard smash.
He did the mash.
It caught on in a flash.
He did the mash.
He did the monster mash.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Hero Movie Podcast, your greatest source for superhero movie discussion in the multiverse. I'm your host, Adam Porters, and joining me today, he lost all of his money in a failed gag shop franchise, Bruce Leslie.
I'm a prickly pear, and is it just me, or does Richard Mouser keep getting handsomer?
Oh, it's not just you. It's true. We are short one Sean this week, but that is A-OK. He has blessed us with the presence of a Stallone connection, so that streak will not go.
Thank goodness. I know that's what everybody was worried about.
No, exactly.
It's the curse of Boogedy. All three of us can't get together for a Boogedy film.
That is kind of strange. It's in preparation for this podcast last night, I was like, I've got a little bit of time here because our movies kind of ended up a little bit late, and there were, Bond and what's the other long flipping one that's out right now? I don't remember. Whatever other long Dune. That's what it is. Bond and
Dune's
Dune
a long one.
are like both like 2.5 hours. So like you're waiting for like the last half hour for people to come out. So I was just like, you know what? I'm gonna throw on while I'm kind of looking and cleaning some stuff here. I'm gonna throw on last year's Halloween episode to kind of get a vibe as to what went on and everything. And first of all, I'd forgotten how much Sean actually loved the first Mr. Boogedy.
Yeah, he's a big fan.
And I was like, oh my gosh, I totally had forgotten about all that. We had such a good time. And you and I had talked Mr. Boogedy on your podcast a good while back as well.
That was when I had to work that magic of editing to get your track and my track and Chris's track all.
Oh boy, I remember that now. That was quite the ordeal, is getting that to work well. If people listen to and you don't even have to be that keen of a listener to that episode, but you can start to hear those edits. It was a yeoman's work. I wouldn't have done it. I would have just been like, this show's scrapped as far as I'm concerned.
It was the kind of time I would only put into editing a podcast during the lockdown. That was back when nobody was working or anything.
Yeah, it's like I got free time over here. Today it'd just be like, well, that's just going in the trash can and we'll never see that again. That was a good time for us. We had a good discussion. It was fun and everything, but we are the last ones that will ever hear that one. But not this week. No, sir. We got a whole big old giant show here for you today because we're talking about the sequel to Mr. Boogedy, Bride of Boogedy. Now, while the first Mr. Boogedy movie was a paltry 45 minutes, this one here, boys and girls, is feature length. And if you haven't watched either one of these films, they're both still available right now on Disney Plus. I'm sure that's how most people will be watching these things. And we're doing a little bit of a treehouse of horror here because after Dune came out and everything, we were like, we want to do this to kind of keep a little bit of a tradition alive here and everything because there's only 2 of them. Let's get those in order and stuff. But because of Dune and everything, we had to push it to another week. So while hopefully you're finishing off your Halloween candy here and everything, you can listen to a little Mr. Boogedy or Bride of Boogedy, rather.
For authenticity, we are recording on Halloween night. So
it's true. It's
prime Boogedy season for us.
Yeah, I mean, all the lights are turned out here. Do kids trick-or-treat in your neighborhood anymore these days?
Our neighborhood, yes, tons of kids trick or treat, but not on Halloween night. We live in I've always grown up in areas where like the city sets trick or treat between like 6 and 8, and they usually do it on like the Thursday before Halloween.
That is the
unless Halloween's actually on a Thursday. But yeah, because the adults all want to do stuff on the weekend. We don't want to stay home and hand out candy.
You remember when it used to be for children Halloween and the adults just co-opted the crap out of this? It's unbelievable.
It was my favorite holiday growing up, the most democratic holiday. If you're willing to put in the work, you get the reward.
Yeah.
It's not like Christmas where it all comes down to if your parents are rich or not. Like Halloween, you go out and you're willing to put in the time knocking on doors, you're going to get the candy.
Yeah. And sometimes, sure, like all things, you got to go through and, jump a couple of river alligators of circus peanuts and
yes,
the dentist house that's going to give you like toothpaste and stuff. And you're like,
the religious house that gives you chick tracts. We always had a couple of those.
Like even as a religious person, I look at that and be like, come on now, you're making us all look bad. It's terrible. But speaking, we'll get to that in just a second. But remind me, I've got an email that's slightly related to that.
Ooh, cool.
But before we get to all that, we do want to say a big thank you to those that support us over at patreon.com/HMP. Doesn't matter what level you support this show at. You get our pre-show, post-show, Dinger Zone, all of that good stuff. And we want to thank you guys. And since it's Halloween as we're recording this and next month starts over, next week we will give all the executive producer kind of ships and all that sort of good stuff and everything. So you still have time to get in on all of that. And if you're of that level, if you're at the $20 level above, you want to like plug something or say something and call Sean a name, whatever you want to do, let us know. And
take full advantage of those privileges.
Exactly. Let us know, and we'll kind of shout you out on the next show and everything, because like honestly, you guys supporting us month after month after month and everything really means a whole lot. And if you listen to the Dinger Zone, you know how much that actually truly came into play this this month.
Yes.
So we love you guys, and thank you so much for that. So, but if you can't do that, give us a review on iTunes. We always appreciate those, or anywhere else that you do. And sometimes, you can write us in a little letter and something like that, and we can do this.
Bale's here.
Speaking of old shows and religious things, this one comes to us from Justin, and he said, while listening to some older shows this past week, I came across your Bible Man episode. Let me tell you, as a guy who worked for 4 years as an assistant manager of a Lifeway Christian stores, y'all were way too kind to that thing.
Oh, my.
Well, Justin, there's actually, believe it or not, and I don't know that we necessarily addressed it in the show. Maybe we did, maybe we didn't. It's been a minute. But specifically for that show, our goal was we wanted to just be as complimentary as possible. Our goal was not to just take that easy route of just bashing on it, because there's a lot of silly, dumb, corny things about that,
Oh, yep.
That little special and show and stuff like that. But that's also kind of what makes that fun and funny too. So we wanted to go after that particular thing is just more of a positive stuff, and just not be the old dumpers that everybody else would always be on that, and just go like, isn't this stupid? Willie Ames is being a dummy or whatever. Look at that stupid suit. But at the same time, we were just like, you know what? Let's see what this was, and try to have as much fun and positivity as it was with it. So, it could have been a lot worse. Yeah. We could have drudged through all of that, but we decided to have a little bit of fun and stay positive with it, and maybe we'll do some of that for this episode.
And I also think we wanted to just focus on the show itself and not bring in any kind of thoughts we might have about the religious aspects.
Yeah, exactly.
Because we know we got a diverse group of listeners, so we didn't want to go too far one way or the other with that. We wanted to try and be objective.
Yeah, and that's the thing. And there's like all things, and we'll talk about it certainly with our review of Bride of Boogedy, is that there's times and places for all of these fun things. So, that you take them and where you got them and everything. But that's all kind of good. So, I'll close up the mailbag. That's what I wanted to do.
Bale's here.
And as always, you can email us at heromoviepodcast@gmail.com. We'll read it on the show, just like that one. It works. We can do it.
Yes.
So as you might imagine, there's no trailer for this thing, as that would rarely be.
Are you sure?
Now, believe it or not, Bruce,
I feel like I saw it coming before Ghostbusters at the theater.
You may be misremembering. I don't know. It's rarely the case for a show that was episode 23 of season 31 of the Magical World of Disney
that it doesn't get its own trailer.
That's it. But as prestigious as that is, I'm sure there was probably some sort of trailer cut for like a Disney VHS or something at some point.
Oh,
but,
yeah.
We'll get into all the details. But before we do that, let's find this out, shall we?
It's time for Bruce's Comic Book Connection.
Now, in listening to last year's episode where Bruce, again, the symmetry in this is quite brilliant, because Bruce sent in an audio version of his Comic Book Connection last year. This year, Sean sent in his Stallone connection, well, via text, but we're trading off everything here. So last year's Comic Book Connection for this was tenuous at best. Let's see what he's got this time.
I don't even remember. I don't even remember what I put together last year. But look, there's no Bride of Boogedy comic book.
What?
Like, look all you want. You're not going to find it. There's not even a comic book I've read that's close to Bride of Boogedy. Like, But this movie does kind of have a magic key in it, so I could maybe talk a little bit about Lock and Key. But there's a season 2 of that show that just came out, so I may want to hold back on the Lock and Key talk.
Don't burn that
review.
bridge this early.
And I guess Dr. Doom had a messed up face, and he was always wanting to marry Sue Storm. So Sue Storm is kind of like a Marvel Bride of Boogedy. But I'm afraid Fantastic Four fans will never forgive me if I stretch too far to compare Doom and Mr. Boogedy. There was an episode of Super Friends in which Darkseid wanted to use mind control to marry Wonder Woman. So I guess that had a little Bride of Boogedy energy going on. And hey, the uncle dresses up in a gorilla suit. So I don't know, maybe Gorilla Grodd? DC did have a character in the 80s named Gypsy. And they claim the fortune teller in Bride of Boogedy is a gypsy. So I think we could make that comparison, though the more appropriate term is Romani. But I'm going to tell you, I don't think that lady was really Romani. I think it was a scam.
Nah, they tend to have darker complexions.
And Mr. Boogedy glows green and possesses people. So maybe he's got a Spectre vibe, if you want to look at that. Eugene Levy's eyebrows look like they were drawn by Jack Kirby, so maybe there's an Etrigan the Demon connection I can shoehorn in. And perhaps the house that the Davis family lives in is the actual House of Mystery. And with all the gag gadgets that Richard Mouser's throwing around, he could be the first live-action incarnation of the Trickster, but he's no Mark Hamill in that role. But this whole group, when they're working together to take down a supernatural villain, could be seen as a precursor to 2011's Justice League Dark. I mean, we've got a fortune teller like Madame Xanadu. Maybe you could squint and kind of imagine Eugene Levy as John Constantine. And you have to admit that David Faustino bears more than a passing resemblance to Detective Chimp. We just pretend the oldest daughter is Zatanna and the mom is Swamp Thing, and boom, there you go. So what I'm trying to say is that Bride of Boogedy isn't an echo of any one comic, but rather every comic book that has ever been made. Well, this movie is nothing more than one grand failed allegory for the very medium of comics themselves. And speaking of failed allegories, Adam, do you have a list?
I do indeed. I want to read the IMDb plotline because this is just the simplest thing ever. A family with a great love for practical jokes is haunted by the family ghost, Mr. Boogedy.
You know what? Maybe one of the best IMDb descriptions I've ever heard, though. Like,
Yeah.
they get it all. That is an hour and a half.
It's
right there.
it's precisely correct. Well, that comic book connection and logline wasn't enough for you. Let me sell everybody on this spooky sequel because this feature-length movie now has everything. You've got the biggest butthole family ever was is back, and they're back worse than they've ever been before. We get a recap of the last movie by Campfire, complete with kids who couldn't care less. We got creepy theremin music, clothes from the Ned Beatty collection, a family that never leaves their PJs, gratuitous cobwebs. We got great quotes from the movie like, "Beware the spiders. Lucifer falls. You're as safe out there as you are in your own living room." And she lives on the edge of town. The clowns are already here. We've got all the jokes this town can handle right here. I love this town, Carlton. Even the dummies are dummies. And when asked why the paperboy might be wearing a pilgrim hat, it was exclaimed, "Well, this is New England."
I love that. See, I wish Sean were here for that.
We got Prank Coffee, Lucy Fest, Senior Whoopee Management. A family who literally defeated a ghost not one movie ago is all, "You must be crazy," when the daughter, who is mysteriously not Christy Swanson anymore, says Mr. Boogedy is back. We've got Hitting Cats with Rocks, state-of-the-art dribble glasses, squirting watches, a lady named Miss Hooter. We got Eugene Levy, who runs the other prank shop in town, which by the kids' standards is utter crap. We got a House of Wax, no telling where that's going to end up going. We got a gypsy lady who looks like Gene Simmons in Never Too Young to Die. We've got interesting pudding flavors, bad makeup, graveyard transportations via shared dreaming, goggles for eating grapefruits, complete with pulp squeegee. We got a seance in a joke store. What could go wrong with that? We got Vincent Scampinelli, who says, "I'm Lazarus, I dig graves." The guy who played Abe Lincoln in Bill and Ted. We got Mr. Witherspoon, now with 100% less eyebrows. Vigilante Justice, Possession, Levitation, Wolf Howling, Gorilla Suit wearing, Fast Milk drinking, Cloak wearing, Body glowing, Food fighting, Carnival exploding, the best fat guy blow-up suit since Weird Al's Fat Video, essentially a ghost version version of Benny Hill goes on. We got a cowboy ventriloquist doll, onion ice cream, clearly Star Wars blaster sound effects that were ripped off and not paid for, I'm sure. You don't need a magic cloak to have friends. A good fight. We got eraser head hair, Bride of Frankenstein hair. This movie's got everything, Bruce. And it's an hour and a half.
Oh, it definitely has everything. Man, okay, so a couple points I want to start with.
Okay.
And I think that's going to be, I want to just start off by talking about like the sequelness of it, the fact that they doubled the running time.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess part of that is because the first must have been by some metric, the first must have been successful, because you don't do another one if it was a flop, and you definitely don't double the length. But I think doubling the length might be the downfall on this sequel.
I think you're right, because this comes the next season after the last one.
And spoiler here, but as of this date, there's no Mr. Boogedy 3. So I'm guessing this killed the franchise.
Yeah, I'd say after a good 30 years, it's probably time to hang it up as a franchise, this Boogedy nonsense. But yeah, I think that's one of the biggest kind of the problems with this is, man, oh man, this sucker is long. At hour 33, if this was was one of the things listening to the last Boogedy episode with me and Sean, and one of the things that he was definitely on was it's 45 minutes. You're in and you're out. It doesn't feel like you have a lot of bloated, wasted time with this stuff. It feels like they've got all day long, and you certainly know it.
They've got twice as much time, but they don't have twice as much to say.
No,
and they not only do they inflate Richard Mouser, they inflate this cast because they're bringing in a whole lot of new characters compared to the first one.
Yeah, not only that, we lose a couple characters. Like I said, Christy Swanson is gone. We Gomez is gone now. We got another guy who, like, if they didn't say his name 15 times as Walter Witherspoon, I would not have known that was him, because he looks nothing like him. He wears like a tri-corner
wearing the same hat. That's the only difference. They do have a thing in this. I want to talk about Witherstone and his tri-corn hat, because they have a thing in this movie where at times I don't know the difference between wardrobe and costume. Like, is that tri-cornered hat, like, is that a costume he wears because he's at the Historical Society? Or is, like, in this movie, in this world, it wouldn't be out of place for somebody just to have that sense of style. Well, like, because we see the town chef, and how do I know he's the town chef? Because he looks like Chef Boyardee, like he came right off the pasta can, when they're having the town meeting.
Yeah, and well,
and Mrs. Hooter, like, is that a costume or is that wardrobe? Because she kind of looks like she's dressed up for Halloween until she's at the actual Halloween carnival when she's dressed as a princess. So it's like all weird with her because she looks like a witch or something the whole time she's on. Like every scene, she's wearing this pilgrim hat and this black cloak. Like I thought that was just a costume. But then when she actually puts on a costume, it's totally different.
Yeah, Witherspoon was the exact same way. Like, he's wearing that tri-corner hat the entire time. And then, like, during the seance, he's wearing, like, one of those old aviator
Olaf
hats.
From Frozen. Oh, yeah. During the seance, he has the aviator hat. And during the festival, he's like Olaf from Frozen 30 years before Frozen came out.
Yeah, if it wasn't all Disney already, I'd say somebody got a lawsuit on their hands. But that's probably just where they stole it. It's okay.
And like, you can tell that they're trying to figure out how to fill time because they add this whole thing to Witherspoon's character that he likes to make ice cream with horrible flavors. Like that feels very Scooby-Doo to me. Like that sounds like something Shaggy and Scooby are eating, is the spinach and bacon ice cream and stuff like that.
At the same time, too, couldn't you see John Astin doing that way better?
Well, I can see John Astin doing anything better than this guy.
He's not very good, but at the same time, too.
And also, John Astin's kind of a legend for schlocky stuff.
Yeah, but like, at least, like, he feels like he's also still trying to do a bit of what he did in the first movie because he's acting so hard, but because he doesn't have the giant eyebrows and stuff, it's like it comes off as like insincere in a weird way. I know that having big, giant, bushy eyebrows shouldn't be the thing that makes you seem more sincere in your children's horror movie and everything, but it does.
And John Astin, he's just an icon of not really scary kid spooky. You got that long history, the Addams Family. It's like dream casting for something like this. And I know bringing in Eugene Levy is trying to bring some star power in, but he's just not really in this same vein.
Yeah.
Though he is an interesting villain. I can't think of him being a villain very often.
No, not really. Not that I can recollect with a lot of his movies, because he very very often just kind of plays the guy that you sort of root for.
He's like the loving but inept father ever since American Pie.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because he played that role in American Pie, and now he's pretty well known for his TV show where he's kind of playing a slightly different version of that as the inept but loving father.
But even that's like the inept character was very much him in the majority of Christopher Guest films and everything, where he's just he's a little bit off. He's not quite all there, but he's genuinely, a decent enough person to where you never really dislike him. But in this one, he's a real jerkwad, and it's kind of fun seeing him lean into this with his little John Waters mustache and everything. Yeah. I didn't know I had not. Full disclosure, I had not seen this since I was a kid, so. And that was one of the things that we talked about on the first Boogedy episode last year was this was something that they would show at my daycare just on like rainy days or whatever. They would put on, I would guess, both of these because I certainly remember none of the specifics really about this one, but I remember a lot of the kind of vibe that this one had, which was a lot more green, a lot more glowing green stuff in this one and the portal kind of stuff. I remember that all a little bit well, and that's what... This stuff used to scare the crap out of me as a little kid, and I was a scaredy cat little kid. But
well, they definitely got you. They definitely got Eugene Levy on his way up because I don't think this movie gets him at his peak or present day.
No, because this is what 1987, so you had another 10 years onto this, and there's no way they get him for this. But I don't think Wild World of Disney went on much after 33 seasons.
It's one of those things though that if you told me that they still put out new episodes occasionally on ABC now, I'd believe it. Like it's one of those shows that it's like, well, we already own all this stuff. Let's just throw it on there on a Sunday night, and if nobody knows about it, so what?
Well, one of the things I'm confused about with this one now. I like that it's the sequel and everything, and it follows up pretty close to where that story was last time. But this time, the kids are clearly at least a year older because they're a little bit bigger.
In real time, it's set 1 year later.
But here's the problem that I have with that, like it's set 1 year later. Why does he not have a store? They've gone to quote unquote New England, which is wherever that is.
I'm picking up hints here. This is definitely supposed to be Salem, Massachusetts. Come on, even though they don't say it, we know it, right?
Yeah, well, it's like they feel like they're going to get in trouble with the Chamber of Commerce if they say that. Like they're going to get a nasty letter.
They're going to have to write a check to call it Salem. I mean, give me they don't even want to say it's in the state of Massachusetts, but we know where they're at.
Just like hey.
We know they're near wherever the Pilgrims landed, Plymouth Rock.
Lucifer Falls. Again, it's like
those Puritans love to name towns after Lucifer, if that's one thing we know about.
Yeah, it all seems to start adding up here. But they keep on with the Lucifer Falls as if it was just like, no. It's just the same as saying, Lexington. It's the same thing.
And they also call it Lucy Fest. Like they don't call it the Halloween Carnival, which it obviously is, right? Yeah. Except it's really sunny, and I don't know that New England Octobers are super sunny. I don't know that selling ice cream in October in New England is a good idea, but also, I mean, he's dipping it in onions, so who knows?
See, the onions are what give it the fall warmth.
Give it the pop.
Now, see, your problem is that you're thinking about it in the wrong way, Bruce. You're thinking about him just putting raw onions into ice cream. That's not how you do it. You got to caramelize those bad boys. Get a little color on them and everything. Then you get them at the ice cream.
He just dips the cone in a bowl of onions. Those are like onions you put on your chili dog.
You got a smoky flavor to them. So char those onions up before you put them in your ice cream, for heaven's sake.
I say a little ground chili pepper might actually work, but not onions, not just raw onions.
No, I couldn't see that.
You should at least call them scallions, give it a little flair.
Make them decorative. Cut them on the bias just so kids think it's fancy.
Do you have any idea why Christy Swanson didn't return to this franchise for part 2? I don't know the answer to that.
I don't either. I don't know enough about the timeline of her career to figure out where her and
this would have still been pre-Buffy.
Yeah, Buffy's probably 4 or 5 years away at this point, I guess.
Something like that, maybe 3.
Yeah, I feel like that's 95 or something like that. But no,
because I mean I don't know that she really had I'm looking here. The same year as the original Mr. Boogedy, she was also in a Wes Craven movie called Deadly Friend. So maybe she was done with TV at that point.
Yeah, she She just grew too fast and everything. Married with Children hadn't come out yet, so David Faustino was still going there, which is also hilarious because like by the end of this movie, he's in a costume of the devil, and the devil's got a little mustache and everything, and it still looked like a full-size David Faustino.
Now, also, yeah, exactly.
I'm like, oh, he would look the same 20 years later.
For the first time in my life, I decided to look at the filmography of Kristy Swanson. And in 1987, the year this movie came out, Mr. Boogedy, Bride of Boogedy came out. She was in Flowers in the Attic, which was, an 80s hit. I don't know that it's had much staying power, but it was certainly well known in 1987. So that's probably a pretty big role for her.
It's probably a better move than this overwrought sequel. on a Disney television thing that in a time in 1987 where I don't know when did the Disney Channel debut? It just feels like 90s for me.
I couldn't tell you, man. I feel like the Disney Channel was around all the way back in like 84, 85. It was a special subscription, kind of like HBO, because I remember going over to like a friend's house and they had the Disney Channel on their satellite or something. It was a big deal.
Yeah. I think it was probably all through satellite and everything, because like the small town that I grew up in, like, shoot, dude, we didn't even like through the cable company, we didn't even get MTV till around like 1997. Like everything.
Yeah. So what I'm seeing here says the Disney Channel started in 1983, but I remember going over to a friend's house to watch it back then, and it was not like modern Disney Channel at all.
Nah, it's got to be all like just the satellite stuff like that.
But Good Morning Miss Bliss, the show that would become Saved by the Bell, did start on the Disney Channel.
Is that right?
So that helps date that a little bit.
Okay. I love the fact that we're still rolling with all of the pranks and everything. I love the idea that there's not only one prank salesman in the store, but two.
I love that. And I love not only is there two, but like Eugene Levy is selling reject pranks. Like you can actually get second-rate pranks, because first-rate pranks aren't really high-quality construction. If you've ever been to the beach and walked into a prank store.
Yes.
And he's got like all the broken ones. Like he goes and gets the pallets of rejects, and that's what he's selling to this town in his general store. I think that's kind of funny.
And it's also hilarious when a 7 and a 9-year-old come in your store and look at all of your stuff and just go, this is all junk. This is garbage.
And I think if you can read between the lines and pick up on the subtlety in this movie, you start to understand why Richard Mauser has lived in this town for a year and still hasn't opened up his prank store. Because when the uncle comes to visit, who like works for corporate for Gag City, that uncle is the wife's brother, not Richard Mauser's brother. So he married into Gag City money.
I'm going that Gag City money.
So I'm getting the idea, like they can't fire him because he's married to this guy's sister, but he's like, he's getting like a salary, like a corporate salary, and he's just trying to milk not opening the store as long as he can get away with it. That's the idea I start getting.
Yeah, it's quite strange and stuff, but they're like, oh, we finally got a place. They walk in, and this is one of the, okay, take this in the spirit with which it's given, Bruce. Richard Mauser's character is a lot like how I picture Bruce as a father. Just very enthusiastic. His family will kind of like, they'll entertain him enough. Sometimes they'll roll their eyes and just go like, Dad's at it again. But like walks into this like just broken down place that's kind of a wax museum at the exact same time. And he's just
dungeons? It looks like a dungeon.
Yeah, a dungeon wax museum, and like in the first movie when they pull up to their brand new house at the dead of night when there's a giant storm and everything, he's a bundle of positive energy. He's just like, this is great, this is perfect, everything's yes. Oh my gosh! He walks into this new place and it's got all of these mannequins and stuff around. It's like, oh no, this is just great. This is awesome. I love everything about this. I was like, I want to be as positive as this guy is about everything, because he is just. He goes in with the vigor of a child. Just goes like, yeah, we'll make it all happen.
I grew up in a small town, and I'm pretty sure at some point you've probably lived in a fairly small town, right,
yeah.
Adam?
Very, very much, yeah.
So I got to say, and you tell me if this is right or wrong, but in a small town, because Lucifer Falls is definitely like a small town.
Oh, yeah.
If there was an abandoned wax museum dungeon in your town, wouldn't that be all the kids ever talked about like 24 hours a day?
Yeah, you'd be going down and looking through the windows and stuff, or trying to break in.
Like nobody knew this place existed. They're like, oh, look at this. And then they say the previous owner just mysteriously disappeared. man, everybody would be nonstop talking about the abandoned wax museum dungeon that the owner disappeared.
The
like
creator
all
never
the time.
left. Exactly. That'd be total legend and everything. And you'd be like, well, like that could be part of the story. It's like we don't have enough money, and the only place that we can get is this. And I listen. We got a little story that's kind of like that in my. Let's sit around, everybody. It's time for a Halloween story from Adam's childhood. We didn't have a lot of money. We ended up at one point when I was a kid, probably we'll call it 7, 8 years old, somewhere in that neighborhood. We rented this house in the neighborhood. That was not the best neighborhood, but not a horrible neighborhood. It's nice enough. But we got like the rent and everything real cheap. And I had what I can only describe as a supernatural experience in that house. So my brother and I shared rooms. We had bunk beds. One night I got up. I wasn't like a bad dreamer or anything, but I just got up and I was on the top bunk. And as you know, kids, they don't use any bunk bed ladders. That's just, that's sad. So I just jumped down from the top bunk, walked to the door of the room, and I don't know what it was, but something inside me had me look back towards the bed. So I look underneath the bed where my brother is, and there's like moonlight that's kind of shining into the room and everything. And underneath the darkness of where his bed is, I see moonlit hands hovering right above his body and everything.
Oh, that's not good.
That's an absolute, that's and it scared the crap out of me. I went to my parents' room and, but that's the only like actual supernatural.
Did you at least like give your brother a little warning? Like, hey, Mark, get up.
What are you kidding? No, I was frightened to death. I was out of there.
You just ran.
I just split. Like my brain didn't know what to do.
Every man for himself once the demon shows up.
Yeah, if the demon shows up, listen, I love him, but at this point, my guess is he's gone.
One of us has to live to carry on the family name.
Yeah, we got to. Someone needs to tell the tale here of what happened. If I go and get myself killed as well, do you think that's going to be advantageous? They lose 2 sons instead of 1? Let's have them lose the 1. And they're just going to have my sister hold down the family? I don't think so. But
we'll miss you, Mark.
But it happens. Like that's like so weird, stupid, spooky stuff happens all the time. And like but none of these kids are scared of anything. That's also what I love too, is that they are just the bravest. Like even through all of this stuff that happened, the family also just tries to pretend that none of it also happened at the same time either. When the daughter comes in and just goes, Mr. Boogedy's back, and they're just like, what are you, insane? I know just like one movie ago that we yelled at all this stuff.
Exactly. The boys have the dream, and they just totally dismiss the 2 sons having the exact same. It would be different if they hadn't just battled a ghost a year ago. But it's like after what you've been through, and then I start to think, well, maybe this is like Derry in Maine, and it's like the it thing where the adults start to forget what happened when they were kids or whatever. Maybe they're forgetting but they clearly have a well-formed memory of everything they went through with Mr. Boogedy.
They just think
which
that,
I think is pretty irresponsible to just throw it out of pocket like it's impossible.
Yeah, we sucked up his cloak in a shop vac, and that was that. He was gone. It's fine. What's the big deal? What are you?
That's all you got to do to get rid of a ghost. Is
no, Mom. I'm telling you, he's back. This is really bad. This is no good. Oh, sweetie. I feel like, what's wrong with you?
I also feel like it has that sequel problem or the follow up to a pilot where you try to put all your best stuff in that pilot to get it picked up, and you don't have anything left to follow it, because I really felt like they were struggling to have good gag gifts in this movie compared to the first one. And they weren't knocking it out of the park in the first one. Let's just be clear. They're really missing a step on the gag stuff. Like at one point, they just have one of those regular run-of-the-mill ping pong ball guns that were pretty common in the 80s for kids to play with. That's not even a gag. That's just a toy.
Yeah.
And he has the goggles when he's eating his grapefruit, but the grapefruit's not the gag. And the goggles aren't a gag. They actually are serving a very good purpose. Like it's just ingenuity. He's more like the dad on Gremlins, where he's suddenly trying to come up with real inventions that people just don't want because they're keeping him from getting grapefruit juice in his eyes. And they even have a little squeegee to clean them off with, which is what sells them. Without the squeegee, they're just goggles.
Exactly. He's just wearing goggles. But not only is there a tiny little squeegee that comes with it that is just the perfect size, also love the fact that the family is not commenting on them at all.
Yeah.
That is just like, this is how Dad does it.
You're living in this house with Richard Mauser. I don't think anything shocks you.
And with pinky up, he's just squeegeeing the stuff, and he spends way too like you didn't get showered in grapefruit juice, my dude. But he's just like constantly like, yeah, you see this?
Yeah,
I'm doing it.
I've managed to eat a few grapefruit in my day, and yeah, they do get a little juicy sometimes, but I've never had the spitting viper venom straight for the eyes like that grapefruit he's eating. Like, I thought it was a gag grapefruit, but it's supposed to be a real grapefruit.
Point it away from you. You know what I'm saying? Just get it away from your face.
And I will say here that when I say they're running out of ideas for the gags, a solid 70% of the gag items just involve squirting water on people.
Yeah, it's like, haha, didn't you like that? And like his gags
and his
with
brother-in-law, his brother-in-law is in the family business, so he should know that, like, when Richard Mauser has something on his hand, you don't look right at it and say, hey, what's that strange thing on your hand, and then get squirted in the face with water. But I do like how much they laugh about what I think are more cruel jokes than practical jokes.
Yeah, sometimes they're even in the first movie, they're super jerks a lot of times, and they're just laughing, and it's like, okay, there's practical jokes, and then there's just you being a ding dong to everybody that's in your family. And at some point, and you could see it a little bit in the first movies, that the wife is kind of like she laughs at stuff, but at the same time, you can also tell she's quite exasperated at certain points.
Well, I remember at some point thinking, like, this must be the most wonderful, patient woman in history to stay married to Richard Mauser this long. But this movie, we find out it's her family that got him into the Gag City business. Like, it's her brother that got him into Gag City. So now I'm seeing it in a new light. Like, maybe it's Richard Mauser who has Stockholm Syndrome. Like, she's convinced him to live this life. And she has this annoying laugh in this movie. That's new, right? Like, she didn't laugh like that in the first one.
Oh, no, she most certainly did. What I call the Horseshack laugh.
Because she's way more into the gag, living that gag lifestyle than I remember her from the first one.
Yeah, it's a little bit. I think she's a little bit more into it in this movie and stuff. And, I don't know. Maybe it's the time in Lucifer Falls is, lightened her load a little bit, and so she's
or
not
driven
so
her
bad.
Insane, either or.
Or put you in the nut house to where you're finally getting along with all the rest of the inmates in this crazy town. But no, she's an enabler to be sure.
and just to go back to Christy Swanson for a minute, I understand sometimes you got to recast a role. That's television. Soap operas do it all the time. Movies have to do it. Famously, Rusty in the Vacation movies recast every film.
They both get recast just in every film. Yeah.
But my goodness, I don't care how young and stupid the kid is that watched this in 1986. They don't think that's the same sister. They're very different types here. They didn't cast in the same mold at all with the replacement.
At least make her blonde. Just dye her hair blonde,
and give her a wig. You don't even have to dye her hair. And for some reason, they managed to cast as the teenage older sister somebody who looks like a hardworking single mom in a 70s movie, just looking for love and doesn't have time. Like, she seems like a 35-year-old half the time. Like, she could be the mom on One Day at a Time or something with those looks she's got.
She's in here playing Ellen Burstyn's role, and Alice doesn't live here anymore, and she's also a teenager.
You could tell me that actor was 35 years old when she made this movie, and I'd kind of believe it.
I could see that. I mean, she's
like, I think a lot of it's the hair. Sally Field at 35 looked about like that. She kind of has that Sally Field vibe going on.
Born in 1968, Tammy Lauren is.
So this was 87, so she would have only been 19. Wow. Still, that's not bad.
That's what the hair does. I think the hair is what kind of really. It's definitely
that feathered hair, and then like the cleft chin just adds some maturity to her look.
Well, it doesn't help that you're
Tony Curtis. The lady looks like Tony Curtis, that teenage girl.
It doesn't hurt that like her clothes are like kind of fairly old lady-ish too, and everything.
Yeah, it's like she seems like she's from something in 1982, not 1987.
Oh yeah. So, Boogedy is trapped in this big statue. I'm not sure how that ended up coming about.
Well, I'll tell you what, they spent more money on that cemetery set than they did on any of the flashback sets from the first one.
Oh, my gosh.
I mean, it's clear they had a bigger budget, but not big enough. Do you understand what I'm saying there?
I think so, but I think, again, as a kid, to me, this was all like super moody and very, very scary and stuff. So I think when you're trying to entertain, I would put this movie in the what, 6 to 10-year-old? What do you figure? That sounds about like the right age to watch this.
I think up to 11.
Yeah,
I think once you're 12, you think you're too cool for it.
Yeah, it's like, oh, Mr. Boogedy, what am I, scared of nothing here? But the makeup is still good, like it was in the last film and everything, and they do a lot more of it, and there's a lot. The production values are much bigger. Yeah, they
do a lot of effects with that statue, and if you recall that first one, the production budget's like high school play when they're having the flashback to the Pilgrim times. It's like just painted on plywood and up in the background. Remember?
Yeah, just white cycloramas and a whole bunch of fog on the ground so you don't see people wearing flip-flops.
Exactly. So they really did, and they did a lot with that statue. They had it split, they had it come back together, they had Mr. Boogedy's hand come out of it. I mean, they really did a lot that they couldn't do in the first one.
Yeah, there's glowing stuff, CGI everywhere, people are floating around and stuff, and floating better.
I don't know that there was CGI everywhere. Well, I think that a lot of that was still painted on cell kind of stuff.
No, I don't know, because like when Richard Mauser's like floating up there and everything, and he just does Boogedy, kidding, which is like the weirdest thing ever. It's like, what's going on in that scene where he's just? I gotta tell you, is he fighting Boogedy?
I know it's because we just watched Dune last week, but when he's like inflated and got fat and started floating, I was thinking of Baron Harkonnen, because you know how Skarsgård there is kind of got a fat suit on and he starts floating there at the end with his suspensors, and I was like, wow, this is like a really low rent Baron Harkonnen here.
I'm for it. I had forgotten that like he had been possessed and everything, and while watching it this time, I think I understood probably a little bit about what kind of scared me, because like a lot of dads in the 80s and up until far earlier than into the 90s than one would probably want him to have, my dad was a mustache man. For a very, very long time, and so. I don't want to say my dad looks like Richard Mauser because he doesn't really, but it's that kind of that fatherly mustache vibe. You know what I mean? And so like when dad gets possessed by Boogedy and stuff, when I was a kid, I felt like that really scared me. It's like, when
I could see that
when
there's
one
nothing
of the
scarier
adults,
than a parent turning against you.
Exactly.
When you're a kid.
When the person that you look to for security and protection becomes the thing that's coming after you, that is frightening for a child.
Absolutely. Even when it's something as gentle as Mr. Boogedy, just the idea that the one person that you're supposed to run to when you're scared is the one you have to run from is awful. I kind of saw bits and pieces of The Shining at a way too early age, and that was the most terrific part about that is the fact that your dad might try to kill you with an axe.
Yeah, it's just like, oh, everything's fine. Dad went bananas.
Like 6-year-olds, by the way, 6-year-olds shouldn't watch Kubrick's Shining. I'll just let parents out there know that.
Oh, and I'll say this, and when you're like, 8 and 9 years old, even if it's playing on television, they shouldn't be watching Child's Play either. I just remember like one night I was over, or one day, it was in the daytime when I watched it too, or at least parts of it, when Child's Play was on at somebody's house, and like we watched a couple of minutes of it, and all I remember that night is taking a bath and being very, very scared and just be like, oh, God.
You had to get rid of your My Buddy when you got home.
It was not good. Trust me, I never had a My Buddy. Even if we were, I probably would have had to, like, what was the monster version of that? Do you remember that?
My Pet Monster.
Was it that?
Yeah, My Pet Monster.
I had somebody. I enjoyed all my toys. I'm sure, much like you. I'm sure I enjoyed a lot of my toys through other people.
Yes,
other people having the toys, and it's just like, oh, this is kind of like I had. My cousin had all of the toys and stuff, and other friends around the neighborhood had things that we were just like, oh, let's go over and play with all your cool stuff. Like we never had a go-kart.
Yeah, I had a cousin who had like every Kenner Star Wars figure in playset. So I was set. I was all set for Star Wars as a kid.
You know what's really strange is my cousin had all of like the Ghostbuster toys, which like, normally wouldn't be like, and I'm talking even the monsters and stuff like that, But the weird part about that is that like, it's like, your dad's a pastor. How do you have all the like monster? How did that work out? Didn't really seem to make sense. It was just like we weren't allowed to have those toys, but your dad's an actual preacher and you get to have all the monsters and villains from Ghostbusters. That seems odd.
All I could ever get was like the Filmation Ghostbusters with the gorilla and stuff. Those are the toys I had. I asked for the real Ghostbusters and I got those because they were on clearance. I do want to talk about some of these new characters though, because they bring in some new characters here and they make this town feel a little bit bigger. We've mentioned her already. The fortune teller, her name was Madalinska. And she was, kind of interesting. But then when we find out that she has a motorcycle with a sidecar, for some reason, I wish that she had had more screen time. And of course, Lazarus, that's a great character actor. What's his name? Vincent Schiavelli or something like that. Mm-hmm. He is, you're going to recognize him going all the way back to One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Yeah, he's been in 157 credits or something before he died.
Yeah, he's just one of those great, creepy looking guys. And it might sound like sacrilege to modern audiences, but when you see this movie, I think you'll get it. Eugene Levy could have used a little less screen time and give Madalinska and Lazarus a little bit more, because I found them to be some of the more interesting new characters introduced.
Yeah, but Levy, when he's possessed and everything, is a lot of fun, because he's just kind of leaning into it, and he if his mustache was long enough to twirl, I'm sure he would have twirled it.
Yeah, it always says something when your mustache is smaller than either eyebrow.
The eyebrows overwhelm the mustache by a 3-to-1 ratio.
I loved it that Lazarus was a ventriloquist, because, the ventriloquist dummy is a whole haunted sequel they could have gone into. What was the name of that classic Magic? Was that the classic ventriloquist dummy scary movie that scared a lot of people as kids?
Yeah, there's that one. And then there's Devil Doll. Then there's Black Devil Doll from Hell, which is this VHS movie. Like, it was shot on VHS. It is... Oh my word! It is one. Just take a look at it. Just look it up on YouTube. Black Devil Doll from Hell. It is early African American
Magic. I think Anthony Hopkins might have been in Magic, so it's probably higher production value.
Oh, it's way higher production value. This thing was shot with nothing.
But I really like that actor, and I think that character of Lazarus was great. Mrs. Hooter. I want to talk about Mrs. Hooter a little bit, because I think she might have been miscast.
How do you figure?
Well, you name somebody Mrs. Hooter, you're going to go one of two directions with that character. Now, the modern sensibilities, you think Mrs. Hooter is going to have some chowder buckets to brag about,
chesty
right?
gal.
Yeah, and she definitely isn't. But another way you could go is like Hooterville, like real rural country type.
Yeah.
But she has this old money New England kind of thing going on. So it's like the name for that character wasn't the right name. And it's not like they spent a ton of time coming up with Mrs. Hooter. They could have called her Mrs. Jones, would have worked better, Mrs. Smith, anything, because she kind of seems like the lady that owned the bank in Gremlins, like that type of character.
Yeah, I feel it was just probably people are going to be like, we're gonna have a kids film, and we're going to be able to get away with saying Hooter a lot. That's pretty good, right? We get to say Hooter kind of like
I'm
a lot.
Sure somebody somewhere thought that because it was a Halloween movie that an owl pun would work, and that's what they were going with. I don't know, but either miscast or misnamed, because she's an interesting enough character. She's another good background villain character, but the name just doesn't work.
No, not quite.
And then the uncle, the uncle who we established is the mom's brother, Richard Mauser's brother-in-law. Mm-hmm. He really felt to me like somebody took the DNA from Polly from the Rocky movies and the DNA from Ned Beatty, put them together, and you got this guy.
Yeah, you put him in a blue leisure suit and everything with a white belt and just
his plaid pants.
His outfit is just chef's kiss. It's so perfect.
It's perfect, and it's definitely not 1987 perfect.
Oh,
it's
no.
1977 perfect.
Trust me, as an uncle, I would love to be able to wear this and get away with it.
Yes.
That would just be the
gorilla
best.
Suit.
And
the gorilla suit was a nice touch.
I love how also his thought was just all right, okay, you got me. You got me. I understand that, I brought you into this business and everything, but you don't know what it's really all about. I'm going to dress up in a gorilla suit and scare the crap out of everybody in your family. Now, what he doesn't know is that, Dad is possessed by Mr. Boogedy, and he thinks all of this is just a gag and a laugh and a hoot and a holler. But also the funny thing is this, too. When he does dress up like a gorilla to jump into this, why does everyone find it so darn funny?
Yeah, because that's what I was saying earlier, that people seem to laugh really hard at things that I don't think deserve a laugh.
Yeah.
And like gorilla suits are only funny in the right context, which is a really, really limited context. First off, gorilla suits will never, ever be mistaken for being an actual gorilla.
No,
right?
no one goes oh my, this seems like a really real gorilla is in here doing real gorilla things.
Nothing about a gorilla suit tricks you into thinking it's actually a gorilla. And then number two, it's only funny if like you're wearing the gorilla suit and a tutu and you're playing a ukulele or something. I don't know. Like you really got to mix a whole lot together. Yeah. Trying to play basketball in a gorilla suit.
But coming in and just kind of giving like the lamest, monkey impression that you can, which is ooh, and then everybody just go like, oh, yeah, what a delight. What a delight to see this grown man, roam around in a gorilla costume. Okay, I guess if that's what does it for you.
Yeah, throw a few jokes in there like, oh, I forgot to shave this morning, something to give people a laugh.
Yeah, it's just it's a little bit much, but at the same time too, he's like, I got all you guys. I got you good.
My favorite part of the first movie still holds up as my favorite part of this one though, and that's when people get boogedied. Like they get taken over by Boogedy, like the way that the steam was coming out of Richard Mauser's ears there, like the little green electrical beams going up in his hair and his hair sticks straight up. And the same thing happens to Levy, the hair sticks up. And then, it's hacky, but it works really well here when they go with the Bride of Frankenstein hair for the mom.
No, it's perfect because like you don't necessarily by the time that it happens, you've been looking for it for so long. Because it's in the cover of everything, so it's in all the advertisements and stuff, and it's called Bride of Boogedy, so you know what it's referencing, and it takes so long for that hair to come around.
And I think arguably Bride of Frankenstein is the best of the Universal movie monster movies, and definitely one of the rare sequels better than the original kind of movie. So I can understand why they would want to invoke those feelings. So I think they should have had her go Bride of Boogedy earlier in the movie and have her do all the stuff that Richard Mauser and Eugene Levy were doing.
It might have been more interesting if they would have gone that direction. If nothing else, we
get to see her walk around with that hair longer.
Exactly. I'm like, and if that's what you're doing here, because you are aping off of that Bride of Frankenstein Universal Monsters thing and everything, lean into it, man. Lean in. Oh, by the way, I just saw the I'm not sure what country this is from, the box for their for this, where the title is El Regreso del Fantasma. It's probably Italian.
Ooh, that sounds fancy.
El Regreso del Fantasma.
I'd love to see this in the Italian dub with no subtitles.
No subtitles. Just let it go. And just Mr. Boogedy. I love the makeup is still good. I like the kind of the Emperor like hologram kind of thing that they got going on. That kind of looks cool and stuff. It certainly feels like the money is there. The money that they do get for this sequel is certainly on the screen, especially at the end when we're blowing up all of the stuff in the town square and whatnot. That took a lot to organize all of that mess, and for like a little tiny Disney show, that's pretty good.
Did they recast the kid ghost, like the Pilgrim kid?
That's tough. I don't know. I didn't really look at it, but while watching it, I was thinking, I'm like, is this the same kid? Because the tough part about all that is they've all got the little kid voice that always kind of happens when it's like it's like infantilized Mike Tyson.
The first one almost seemed like he had a legit speech impediment, and then this one seemed like he was trying to mimic that. But it might just be the same kid. I don't know. Like I got to go back and look at that casting a little more closely.
According to this was his one and only thing. Michael Bartholomew. Wow, what a name! Michael Bartholomew was like he might
name. He didn't even have to audition. They just saw the name and said, "That's our kid. That's a kid Pilgrim ghost if I've ever heard of one."
Does he have some sort of weird speech impediment? Okay, here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna put him in this weird like silver jumpsuit. Why is he in a little silver jumpsuit like he's an alien or something? That's bizarre.
Because you probably didn't pay attention in history class, but that is very period accurate for Pilgrims.
Fair enough. I guess
they look like those Hellbop Comet people.
I played hooky a little bit. Yeah, exactly. It's like he's wearing a pair of Nikes, and at one point, he's as a ghost just goes goodbye. You're like, what? Now, and fades away.
They do have a pretty nice Halloween carnival here, this Lucy Fest. Like, I grew up in a small town, and the fall festival is what they called our Halloween carnival because they didn't want to use the word Halloween, but it was clearly a Halloween carnival.
Because Halloween's copywritten, I guess.
Well, who knows? Who knows? But we would have our fall festival. Everybody dresses up in their costume, usually like a little cheesy haunted house and stuff. This one looked a little nicer than our small town Halloween carnival.
They got a Ferris wheel, for heaven's sake.
Yes, but no other rides. Did you notice that? Like, it's the one trick carnival.
Yeah.
And they're selling ice cream, and it's nice and sunny.
It's Lucifer Falls, where every day is,
You
Tuesday.
want to hear my behind the scenes theory about the wax figures?
Okay.
Because, the moment he goes into a wax museum, we know that those wax figures are going to come to life.
Oh, yeah. You can't have a wax museum without those things coming to life at some point.
One of them is a werewolf. One of them is Jack the Ripper, but the rest are fairly non-scary types.
One's a cop or something, or like a pig cop?
Yeah, some guys just like a guy with goggles in a big pot. Like, I don't quite know. I guess he's being cooked by cannibals or something. But anyway, once he buys it, he puts like the rubber nose and the Groucho Marx glasses, and he puts the big Mickey Mouse gloves on one of them. I think that they did that specifically so that when they came to life and started wreaking havoc at the carnival, they wouldn't be too scary for the little kids. Because if you just had the Wolfman out there tearing up the popcorn booth, that might be scarier than a Wolfman with a rubber nose tearing up the popcorn booth. Yeah. Like, I legitimately think they shoehorned in those costumes to de-scare terrifying a little bit. And also, most of the climax of this movie happens at night, but when the monsters are wreaking havoc, I think it's a conscious choice to have it being at like 2 p.m. with the sun as bright as it could possibly be to make it less scary.
Yeah, and I think that's a smart move, especially like we said, with this is what's clearly a kids program and everything. You want to make it scary, and that's what we said about the first one, is that like it's just scary enough for little kids. It's not so scary that it's going to mess them up.
Is the term they use.
Yeah,
but man, that Wolfman hated that popcorn booth. Did you notice he was just like their idea of being monsters? Like, I guess the rest of them were knocking over other things, but that Wolfman, he just wanted to make sure every bit of popcorn wound up on the ground.
Well,
I would have liked to see him eat it and really like it and just eat it all.
Well, it's white and it's yellow and there's a whole bunch of it, and you can kind of have it fly in the air and everything. It's a good visual, so I think that's probably what they were going for.
When you don't have a fruit cart and a pane of glass to drive a car through, that's your next best, is a popcorn booth.
Yeah. Hey, listen, it's a pain in the butt to clean up.
Throwing it everywhere. And I like it that Miss Hooter and the oldest daughter wore the same costume. I'm just going to call it what it looked like to me. It was like the Good Witch from Wizard of Oz.
Yeah, pretty close.
Yeah, the pink dress with the little crown and the wand. And I thought it was funny that her and Mrs. Hooter decided that they wanted to wear the same costume, though she miraculously changes into a pilgrim costume at the right time.
Yeah, they have way too many. Like, there's so many costume changes within this. They really got happy with that budget coming up. They're just like, all right, we're going to have, Mom, you're going to get about 5 different major costume changes this entire, thing. And everybody gets their kind of time to shine, which is really a lot of fun.
At the end, because the mom gets turned into Bride of Boogedy because he thinks she's marrying the pilgrim lady that drove him down the evil boogedy path in the first place. So you have to know your lore from the first movie to follow.
Yeah, you can't jump into this one blind.
But I think, and at the end, the daughter comes in dressed like a pilgrim and confuses Boogedy into thinking she is Marion, and he lets her mom go, and then that's how they outsmart Boogedy at the end.
It's very Friday the 13th.
I think the first draft, and it kind of makes sense if you're following horror movie tropes a little bit. I think the first draft of this script, the daughter was going to be the object of his affection, was going to be the Bride of Boogedy, because he's stalking her in the beginning, or at least it seems like he's stalking her at the beginning. And then she pulls out the little switcheroo at the end. But I think at some point somebody was like, you know what? I don't know if our magical world of Disney viewers are going to be comfortable with this questionably aged teenager being the object of his affection. And that's why they changed it. But it really felt like, and if you followed any other horror movie trope, it's usually the oldest daughter that the entity's going after.
Yeah, it makes more sense. But that probably takes the scare level up for the kids to another level where it's like, no. And that's another scary thing, is when your parents just go like, oh, you're silly. And like a thing that is like an actual danger that's coming to you, when your parents just go like, nah, you're nuts.
Yeah.
Not a good thing for parents to be doing either. It's just kind of dismissing all of your child's crazy thoughts.
And maybe it was just a red herring, but I see the title of the movie. I didn't really look at the box art because the box art makes it clear who the Bride of Boogedy is. But I just assumed from the beginning and the way it was starting, and they recast Christy Swanson. I'm like, I bet you this is the Bride of Boogedy. Like, he's going after the daughter.
I'll be in it, but I'm not going to be making out with Mr. Boogedy. I'll tell you that right now.
Yeah.
I'm not doing that. I quit. I'm going over to, whatever.
But I do like once he decides to switch his attention from taking the mom to taking the daughter, how the only thing they need to do to save her is just grab her hand and play tug of war.
Yeah.
Like that really seems like an easy way to defeat a powerful ghost.
And at the same time, too, you at the end, it is like they almost try to have like a fake out, because there was a fake out at the end of the first one where it was just like, ooh, you think Boogedy's gone, but there may be something still left. They tease a sequel there, and this one they most assuredly shut it all down and be like, no.
It's like the most Disney version of the Carrie ending possible.
Yeah, you're just like, nope, that's it, that's the end of it. You'll never.
Yeah, with the little kid saying, just joking.
Having a lot of fun here. Well, before we get to our final selection here and everything, we need to find out how this is related back 1-to-1 with Sylvester Stallone. And while Sean is not here, I have a prepared statement from him.
Cool.
Happy Halloween, Mr. Stallone. I hope you're celebrating as a spooky ghost or her hilarious train hobo. I guess I'll have to wait for the pics. But did you know that Burgess Meredith played the Penguin on the old Batman TV series? Maybe you could go as him. You worked with him on Rocky. Anyway, today I'd like to talk to you about Karen Kondosian. She plays Madalinska. Is that how we pronounce that lady's name?
Yeah, Madalinska.
Madalinska in Bride of Boogedy, a gypsy psychic. I'm not sure if the word gypsy is a racial slur anymore, but they use it in the movie, so until someone tells me I'm not allowed to use the word, I'm going to call her a gypsy. Karen Kondosian has done a little bit of everything in front of the camera. You need a tough, no-nonsense lady? She's there for you, Cagney and Lacey. How about a motherly type? She's got you covered. Ferris Bueller, the TV show. How about a sexy nurse? Yep, there she is in Cobra, acting alongside you in Cobra. Here's another trivia I recently learned. It turns out that many of the ideas used in Cobra were holdovers for when you were going to star in Beverly Hills Cop. Did you ever see that? It's a pretty good movie, but it would have been funnier with you playing an African-American guy from Detroit. I'd also like to see how you would have handled the laugh. It probably would have been pretty great. Anyway, in 2009, Karen Kondosian did a guest spot on the Bill Engvall show, and afterwards she completely disappeared from acting. She now works as a writer and travels the world. On her website, Kondosian.com, emblazoned at the top of her page is her motto, Dare to Dare. Now, I'm not saying that a writer should probably have a better motto, but I'm also not saying it. But at least the 71-year-old actress is out there loving her life in ways that some of us could only dream. And there it is, Mr. Stallone. This week's Stallone connection is actress, writer, bon vivant, and Karen Kondosian. I'll try to do better next week. Hope to hear from you soon. Your sweet pal, your pal, Sweet Shawnzy from the internet. I don't normally read his name out loud. That's what's weird.
Yeah. Good job, though, Adam. You did pretty good reading that one.
Yeah, I only read it once previously, so that's not a cold read, but not a super hot read, not one that I practice a whole bunch. So for me, that's what we call flying colors. Well, here at Here Movie Podcast, we have our own patented Robin rating system. Bruce, since you weren't here for the previous Boogedy, do you want to rate that one and this one?
Yeah, the first Boogedy, it's got like a little bit of soft, low-key legend status. It's always fun. It's 45 minutes. Sadly, you can only watch it for the first time once because that's where you get your most bang for your buck.
Yeah.
But I think it's solid, Tim Drake. It's for what it is, it's great. Like, it's a wonderful movie to watch once, and it's 45 minutes. It's just silly. It's a lot of fun to watch them pull this thing off on a shoestring budget. But I think that this sequel killed the franchise for a reason. I think double the length, double the budget, double the cast is not double the quality. And, a lot of people love to call like the sequel movie. They love to stick the old Electric Boogaloo on the end of it. Yeah. But I want to kind of start a new trend because, the sequel that deserves more love is the Sister Act sequel, Back in the Habit. Oh, yeah. So I think they should have called this Mr. Boogedy, Back in the Habit. But unfortunately, this, for me, goes down to that Stephanie Brown level where you really keep checking how much longer's left when you're watching it.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. I think I'm probably going to go just a very low Damian Wayne, and the only reason for that is a lot of my nostalgia for it, and I know that with having those glasses on that this does taint that a little bit. With this, I did decide to kind of, because, like the first one's only 45 minutes. So I'm like, I'm going to double feature this, right? I watched the first one today, and I was just like, oh, I remember liking this. It was, it's there are a couple of points where you'll kind of look at your phone, because I've seen it enough times at this point, even fairly recently, between the podcast, and then I think I watched it again for when you and I talked about it on Chubby Wizard and stuff. So I'd seen it enough times. So like I had a little bit of phone action and stuff. But with Bride of Boogedy, it's around that 40-minute mark, you're going to like, man, if this wrapped up right about now, and if you would have just condensed it all down and had it at that more bite-sized level, I think it would be a lot more of that same fun that we had with the first one. And that it kind of just drops the ball with that. And that's where I think the biggest problem is. Though it is nice to see a bigger budget. It is nice to see them do much more than they were previously doing. So it's like, hey, if we had the budget, this might have been what the first one would have looked like, and been bigger and better and brasher and stuff like that. But then again, that might have taken away from what made that movie nice and charming to begin with,
Yeah.
So for me, I'm gonna go like a low Damian Wayne on this one. Here's the thing. While Sean wasn't here, he wrote the Stallone connection, and we know he did watch it because he was texting us, and he just goes, it is 25 minutes into this movie, and we haven't seen Boogedy outside of like flashbacks and stuff like that. So it takes a minute for things to get going. But we'll talk. Hopefully, we'll talk to him next week and see what his kind of final thoughts are for it and everything. But that's listen. We had a good enough time. But we'll talk about what we're doing next week in just a moment. But until then, Bruce, where can we find more of your work on the internet?
I'd love for people to check out the YouTube channel, youtube.com/C/Bruce Leslie. And guess what, Adam?
What?
I've started to incorporate skits, one-man skits, to my review videos, not the reaction videos, but the review videos. So people are going to want to go. You don't even have to watch the whole video. The longest skit is maybe a minute max. So just go watch the beginning of the review videos.
Oh, Bruce is doing
see my thespian activities in full swing.
If you've ever seen Griffey on YouTube, it's something like that, I would imagine. I like that guy. And of course, we've got all of our 30 Questions podcasts. If you want to check those out, if you're subscribed to our Marvel 30 Questions, we've got one of those coming up super soon with the Hawkeye show coming out. And oh my gosh, real fast it seems. And then, of course, Book of Boba Fett coming out in December and stuff. So keep a lookout for all of our 30 Questions podcasts, and we'll certainly be promoting those a bit more as things go on. So you'll hear about those an awful lot, too. And again, we do want to say a big, giant thank you to people that support us at patreon.com/HMP. Again, we're at the top of the month here, and we'll thank all of you guys and executive producers and all that kind of good stuff come next week's episode and everything. Again, just want to say, if you listen to the Dinger Zone, you know how much you are very much needed and loved in these parts and everything. So we really appreciate all that kind of good stuff. So next week, hopefully we'll be joined by Sean again. The man's been working hard. He says it's good stuff. So at least that's a good thing. At least he's not wanting to shoot himself. So it seems like he's having enough fun with that. So, but next week we'll be heading back into the movies for the Eternals. I can't believe that's come about already. So, and I know nothing. I know a couple of key cast members and stuff like that, just because it's almost impossible to get away from that stuff. But I know nothing else.
And I'm going to confess, I'm not super excited for it.
Because I don't have anything. Maybe, hopefully, that will. It served me well over the past couple of movies and stuff. Really not knowing anything. We'll talk about it. We'll talk about it afterwards. But I saw it last night in Soho, and I knew nothing about it going in. So we'll talk about some of that on the post show and everything. But we'll do all that kind of good stuff. Patreon.com/HMP. We'll be talking about the Eternals next week. For the absent sweet Sean to Kovacs from the internet, Bruce Leslie. I'm Adam Porteous. Stay super, everybody.
Goodbye, Marty and Edie.
I used to be such a sweet, sweet thing till they got a hold of me. I opened doors for little old ladies. I helped the blind to see. I got no friends 'cause they read the papers. They can't be seen with me, and I'm getting real shot down, and I'm feeling me. just a